problem with Harry and Meghan. They don't seem to understand that if you violate your own privacy.
Campbell, who, as I've told you, is doing this YouTube show. I think she drops a new show like every second day.
That from, well, it turns out that she basically walked out of the photo shoot.
You are not ready for what just detonated in the royal world, because this isn't another petty feud. It isn't another headline about bruised egos or palace protocol. It's something far more explosive. Two of the most relentless royal investigators alive stepping forward and questioning the very foundation of Harry and Meghan's family narrative. When Tom Bower and Lady Colin Campbell speak in alignment, people don't just listen, they brace themselves. And this time, the target isn't reputation, it's reality itself. Archie, Lilibet, the children at the center of a story that suddenly feels less like a fairy tale escape and more like a puzzle missing critical pieces. Tom Bower is not some keyboard warrior tossing out wild theories for clicks. He has built a career dismantling carefully polished public images, 26 books deep into royal machinery, celebrity facades, and the art of controlled narratives. He has written about Charles in ways that reportedly caused fury, and he did not blink. He did not retract. He did not soften. That's the temperament stepping into this storm. And beside him stands Lady Colin Campbell, a woman who does not dilute her words to preserve comfort. She doesn't cushion her thoughts for social acceptability. She says it bluntly, directly, and repeatedly. So when these two, from very different angles, start circling the same question, the volume shifts.
Insiders in Montecito claimed Meghan was hysterical, that the cousin's comment went viral without any pushback.
What makes this moment different is not just what they're implying, it's that they're willing to imply it publicly. Bower has openly admitted he did not begin with hostility toward Meghan. She was simply another subject of interest until the Oprah interview altered the temperature entirely. He described what followed as poisonous, and that word lingers because it suggests something corrosive beneath the surface. Not drama, not tension, corrosion. Something eating at the structure from within.
On in Meghan's head. I wonder how.
Exactly. The hypocrisy is just adorable. But yeah, you would think.
And then came the claim that stopped even seasoned royal watchers mid-scroll. The suggestion, carefully framed yet unmistakable, that Archie and Lilibet may not be Harry and Meghan's biological children, or perhaps not theirs in the way the public has been led to believe. This isn't a vague internet whisper. This is a direct question tied to visible inconsistencies, documentary records, and a pattern that refuses to settle quietly.
About who was telling the truth, the palace saw something different, an official record that was no longer clear. Birth certificates are not supposed.
Here's where the narrative shifts from gossip to something far more unsettling. Harry and Meghan built their post-royal brand on authenticity. That was the banner. They left the institution claiming they were done performing. They promised realness, California sunlight, honest storytelling, family first. That was the emotional currency exchanged with the public.
Yet again, Meghan has curated, and she who has such.
But authenticity requires visibility, not exhibition, not exploitation, but visibility. William and Catherine managed to protect their children while still allowing glimpses that feel organic, candid, undeniably real. There are school moments, balcony waves, awkward childlike expressions caught mid-movement. A balance exists. With Harry and Meghan, what exists feels more like a fortress. No hospital step photos, no unscripted public sightings, no spontaneous park snapshots leaked by a bystander with a phone. Just curated frames, blurred backgrounds, controlled Christmas cards, silhouettes of children who seem perpetually half turned away from the camera.
Legal teams are preparing documents that would officially strip Archie and Lilibet of their royal status, titles, privileges, protection.
Privacy is understandable. Total invisibility is statistically strange, especially when you are two of the most photographed individuals on the planet living in an era where everyone carries a camera. Even the most guarded celebrity families experience occasional candid exposure. It happens. Yet in this case, the bubble appears airtight. That's not impossible, but it is unusual. Unusual enough that even supporters began asking softly, then more loudly, where are the children? Then the paperwork enters the scene, and paperwork does not care about narrative. It records facts. Lilibet's birth location reportedly altered after filing, not corrected casually. Altered. Archie's record showing Meghan's name removed and then restored. These are not cosmetic edits. Birth certificates are not social media posts you can tweak on a whim. They require procedural action, deliberate movement within systems built to resist casual modification. Tom Bower didn't scream conspiracy. He labeled them inconsistencies. But in royal terrain, inconsistencies are sparks. 2 children, 2 separate documentation anomalies, no public explanation. Silence where clarification would extinguish speculation instantly. And silence is where suspicion feeds that Lady Colin Campbell then pivots the lens away from paperwork and toward visuals. She questions whether the children appearing across years of footage and photos show consistent natural growth progression. Eye color shifts, ear shape differences, facial development patterns that don't track predictably. Now lighting changes, angles distort, children evolve, all valid counterpoints. But once people begin overlaying images side by side, once they start mapping features across time, the conversation expands beyond fringe corners. She makes a distinction that lingers uncomfortably. Perhaps the narrative requires the idea of children more than the presence of consistently visible ones. That statement doesn't declare guilt. It reframes motive, because the family story was central to everything. The Oprah interview leaned heavily on protection. The Netflix series leaned on domestic authenticity. The emotional arc was built on safeguarding children from the trauma Harry endured. Remove or destabilize that foundation and the structure above it trembles. Then came the allegation that jolted even skeptics. An anonymous former casting agent claiming contact from representatives seeking biracial toddlers for family footage. The timing allegedly aligned with the lead-up to the Oprah interview and the Netflix production. Anonymous sources require caution, but the specificity, the alignment with major public-facing projects, and the refusal of direct denial amplify its weight. If such outreach occurred, why? For what conceivable reason would parents of 2 children require agency-sourced toddlers for personal family footage? That question doesn't answer itself. And notice what followed: not outrage, not lawsuits, not forceful denials, but quiet. In Hollywood, silence is strategy. When platforms sense reputational instability, they don't issue dramatic statements. They drift. Netflix enthusiasm cools. Spotify cites creative differences. Future projects evaporate. Associations thin out. When silence becomes synchronized across industries, it stops feeling coincidental. And that is where this story currently stands, not proven, not resolved, but undeniably destabilized. The brand built on authenticity now faces questions about its most sacred pillar. The fairy tale of escape and protection is being re-examined through a harsher lens. This isn't about liking or disliking Harry and Meghan. It's about narrative integrity. It's about documentation. It's about visibility versus invisibility. It's about whether silence protects truth or conceals something more complicated. And the questions are no longer isolated. They are multiplying. That the shift didn't happen in one dramatic explosion. It happened in increments, small, controlled fractures spreading quietly beneath the surface until suddenly the entire image felt unstable. Because once you introduce doubt into a story built entirely on emotional credibility, everything else attached to it starts wobbling. Look at what followed in the months after these claims gained traction. The atmosphere around Harry and Meghan didn't turn hostile overnight, it thinned out. And thinning out in Hollywood is far more dangerous than public outrage. Outrage can be managed. Silence cannot. The invitations became fewer. The red carpets disappeared. The charity galas where their presence once carried weight suddenly moved forward without them. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly removed from guest lists. And when insiders start using words like unpredictable and volatile risk, you know something has shifted behind closed doors. That Netflix, once eager to brand them as the centerpiece of a modern royal reinvention, began recalibrating. The documentary that was supposed to cement their new era instead became a microscope. Viewers began replaying scenes frame by frame. The children, once again, were visible but not fully visible. Faces turned away at precisely timed cuts. Scenes that felt rehearsed rather than lived in. Background shadows questioned. Overlays examined. Digital analysts commenting on post-production layering that seemed unusually heavy for what was marketed as raw family life. That heavy editing isn't proof of anything. But in a story already carrying paperwork anomalies and visual inconsistencies, it becomes another thread woven into a tapestry of doubt. That Spotify's exit now looks different when viewed through this lens. Creative differences is the industry's version of a polite breakup. It's what gets said when deeper concerns are never meant to be publicly dissected. Reputation management drives decisions in entertainment. Platforms don't cling to talent surrounded by accelerating uncertainty. They detach before the narrative fully crystallizes. Then there's the social silence. George and Amal Clooney, once visibly connected, no longer appearing publicly aligned. Serena Williams, who once vocally supported Meghan, now noticeably absent from the storyline. Oprah herself, whose interview reshaped global perception overnight, maintaining careful distance after the initial spectacle. spectacle. No overt fallout, no public disavowals, just distance. And distance in that ecosystem is intentional. That Harry's invocation of Diana complicates this even further. For years, his emotional shield has been legacy, a son protecting his children from the system that harmed his mother. It is a powerful narrative. It resonates deeply. It humanizes him beyond royal status. But if the structure of the family story is destabilized, the emotional anchor tied to Diana shifts uncomfortably. It no longer functions purely as protective legacy. Critics begin framing it as strategic invocation. That reframing alone alters public sympathy. Sympathy, once cracked, is hard to rebuild. That the most significant development isn't even the allegations themselves, it's the change in tone from former defenders. Online communities that once mobilized aggressively in support now contain threads asking genuine questions, not hostile ones, not malicious ones, just uncomfortable ones. Why no explanation? Why no clarification? Why let this spiral if the answer is simple? Because if the answer were simple, it could be delivered in a single statement. Official records corrected. Clear timeline provided. Visual proof offered in a way that doesn't feel curated to the point of abstraction. In a digital age, clarity is achievable. That instead, the strategy remains silence. That silence can be powerful when accusations are absurd. It signals confidence. But when silence stretches across documentation inconsistencies, anonymous industry claims, visible editing patterns, and synchronized corporate distancing, it begins to look less like composure and more like containment. There is also the timing element that refuses to fade. The alleged modeling agency contact positioned before Oprah and Netflix aligns too precisely with moments where the family narrative carried the greatest emotional weight. If those projects leaned heavily on the idea of building a safe, authentic family life, then any disruption to that authenticity threatens the entire premise that the Oprah interview wasn't just an airing of grievances. It was structured around protection, mental health, media intrusion, safeguarding children from inherited trauma. Remove the unquestioned existence of that protective narrative, and the interview transforms from courageous confession into something else entirely, something strategic. And that's the danger here, because if public perception shifts from victims protecting family to architects managing image, the backlash doesn't just bruise, it reshapes legacy behind the scenes. Reports suggest charitable organizations are reevaluating optics. Public relations teams are cautious about alignment, not because anything has been proven, but because uncertainty itself is reputational risk. In modern media cycles, perception moves faster than verification. Brands and institutions don't wait for courtroom-level proof. They respond to trajectory. And the trajectory right now feels volatile. Could there be mundane explanations? Yes. Bureaucratic errors happen. Privacy strategies can be extreme. Anonymous sources can exaggerate. Digital editing can distort natural perception. Every single piece of this puzzle individually could carry an innocent explanation, but collectively, the pattern unsettles. Two birth records modified. Years of near total invisibility. Visual inconsistencies flagged repeatedly. An anonymous casting claim aligning with major projects. Corporate partners quietly retreating. Social allies creating distance. Silence in response. Each piece alone is dismissible. Together, they generate narrative gravity. The most telling detail may not be anything visible at all, it's the absence of counterattack. Historically, when false allegations threaten reputation at this scale, legal responses follow swiftly. Cease and desist letters, public denials, media pushback. Instead, this situation unfolds in a vacuum of official clarification, and vacuums invite speculation. What makes this moment uniquely dangerous for Harry and Meghan is that their brand depends entirely on moral clarity. They position themselves as truth-tellers stepping away from institutional secrecy. They criticized opacity. They condemned misinformation. That positioning leaves little tolerance for ambiguity within their own narrative. If authenticity is the foundation, even minor cracks widen quickly. The royal institution, interestingly, has remained largely unmoved publicly. No aggressive defense, no inflammatory counter-narrative, just measured distance. And that silence from the palace operates differently. It signals patience. It suggests confidence in letting public discourse exhaust itself. Right now, forensic attention is everywhere. The fairy tale escape narrative is under examination. The California authenticity brand is under examination. The family story is under examination. And silence, once a shield, now amplifies the scrutiny. Whether this becomes a footnote or a defining chapter depends entirely on what happens next. Because in the age of digital permanence, unanswered questions don't fade, they accumulate.